Here's life prep here, and then I come across this article talking about if the grid fails, would you die? Most people don't think it ever fail, and it may never. Not in a total chaos situation. We have blackouts, we have power failures. Sometimes it go a couple weeks. The chaos in some of these extremely large cities, being stuck in elevators, medical facilities, and things in that area. Now, things has changed a whole lot as a lot of the places are starting to convert more to solar energy and some wind power energy as a backup to keep them sustained in ways. But also too, a lot of people can't afford that. So this is only basically certain facilities that can afford it. There's a plant here in Lordstown, and you see tons and tons of these solar panels out there. The problem is they're able to afford to install that. So they're saving money by using solar energy and stuff. And it keeps them going even during a storm because they've got these batteries used to store up this energy in a situation. But for most people, they can't afford it. So here is the basis on this. Uh, it says these articles are interesting as much for their contents as for the comments follow. And he says, absolutely flabbergasted me, he says, how few people understands what life would be like without electricity. I am not talking about losing power in your home, as I talk about. We all do from time to time. I'm talking about losing power on a national scale for a long term. Long term. So that's just think about it. Long term. Oh my God. The fact is, even people when they lose their power for a few hours, they freak out. They're sitting in the dark, and especially it's not so bad during the summer. They go sit outside on the porch or whatever, or they'll open the windows up and do something to kind of keep comfortable. But during the winter months, they're trying to find some place to keep warm, especially if they're using electric heat and things like that. They're trying to figure out how to stay warm during that situation. It says, a lot of them says, oh, we'll go back to the 1800s. Big deal. Big deal. Why not? We'll just go back the way we was. Hey, they did it before. We can do it now. Why not? No big deal. Let's just do that. There is a big deal because you as a society has gotten so used to your comforts. You're used to your AC units. You're used to your heating. You're used to watching TV. You're used to playing video games. You're used to your cell phones. You're used to all this comfort, TV dinners and running to the restaurants and all that stuff. Most of you don't even know how to cook anything, let alone boil water. So I like to see that. And then, of course, here's to argue about the odds of an EMP taking out the grid. It says, you know, and there's always discussion, oh, that will ever happen, and it may never happen. But they do show solar flares and all that stuff and showing up now. It says, Americans without electricity will merely revert to us to pioneer days. You are dead wrong, as I'm telling you that. No pun intended, I hope, he says. And that's right. We wouldn't regress to the 1800s. We would regress to the 1100s or earlier. Life would become a bitter, brutal struggle for survival. Basically, what he's saying is that we would almost revert back to the prehistoric times, basically the medieval times. The plagues when they broke out during some of the medieval times, the thing was so filthy and nasty, and all the runoff and everything. They just tell people to stay locked up in their homes. It was worse. So, thing is, people didn't take baths, so they was exposed to a lot of stuff. They did something called a pity pot or a piss pot. What the guy did, he had this huge cape, and he had this slop bucket. Yes, a slop bucket, not full of hog slop. It's full of piss and shit. Bottom line. So he'd walk around town, and someone would need to use it. So what they would do is he would take that cape and he'd cover around them while they're using the bathroom. So that's where the left hand come in as being unclean. They used their left hand to wipe their buttocks with. They didn't have a roll of toilet paper or newspaper or Sears or Roebucks or some kind of magazine to wipe their butt with. No, they used their hands, reached back and wiped and thrown it on the ground. And that's one reason the strong perfumes and everything was habit forming back during the time for to cover the smells of their body and stuff. So, society thrived in the 1800s for four very simple reasons. A non-electric infusion already existed. People had the skills, knowledge, and tools to make. Three, our population level was far lower, and most people lived rural and raised a significant portion of their own food. There were relatively few people who didn't earn their way. To be blunt, if you didn't work, you seldom ate. Those who couldn't work, the disabled, the elderly, were cared for by family members or charitable institutions. There was no other options. There wasn't no such thing as Social Security and welfare back then. It was a common practice that the families took care of one another. It was nothing unusual to see the kids living with the parents. And sometimes that was still the case to begin with. Sometimes the kids never lived out. If in a case of the farming situation, say this farmer had four daughters, but this farmer had four sons, so they needed a man on their farm. So say they married one of the daughters, he would go and live with that family there because they needed that substantial taken care of as well on that situation. So they lived in a family unit. They lived in it. They didn't do the way they do now as a general rule. Now it's talking about learn how to achieve a simple lifestyle without going green or joining a monastery. Read Patricia Lewis' helpful book. It says the Simplicity Primer: 365 Ideas for Making Life More Livable. I have to check that out. These conditions no longer exist. Home come equipped with outhouses, hand water pumps, and a trained horse stable in the back, and it doesn't. Many people don't have the faintest clue how to cook from scratch, and that's what I was saying. Most people, they live off of TV dinners, frozen foods, things they can pop in the oven, or restaurants. And that's basically it. Many of them don't know how to cook at all. 80% of the Americans lives in cities and are fed by less than 2% of the population. Which means farmers must mass produce food for shipment to cities. And there are far too many people on generality entitlement programs who literally know no other lifestyle except an endless cycle of EBT cards and welfare payments. Society has really got a lot of people very lazy. It has, not that they weren't like that before, but the fact is, many of them like, why should I have to work? I see it every day. I hear them talking about it. Sometimes people use them. They don't want to work. They say, why should I have to work if I'm getting a welfare check? But they take, and then they're talking about going out to a party the night before, getting drunk and getting high or whatever the drugs are doing or whatever. But it's fun for them to do that. But they say, why should I care? I'm getting food. I can go to a church and get food. I can get my food stamps. They don't care to try. They don't want to try. Society has set them up like that and made them that way. It says, society, it also talks about proving again and again that a single weak link can bring down the whole chain. A trucker strike or a massive storm at one end of the country can mean interrupted food deliveries at the end. And I remember years ago of the trucker strike. And the food was kind of scarce coming in. People was getting it, but they weren't getting it and the food was very high. It went up because it was very limited. So anything could happen. Even the humble object, a pencil, for example, has a pedigree of such imaginable complexity that the manufacturer requires a corporation of millions, and not one single person on the planet knows how to make one from start to finish. So, and that's the truth. Uh, they use, they made their ink and they used feathers back in the time. They didn't just use any kind of feathers. They used ostrich feathers and certain type of feathers, and they would actually use that, keep it sharp, the point sharp, and they would dip it in ink to write with. That's what they used to write with. They didn't have ink pens or all this other stuff. And yet some people claim that a rig down situation will be a minor inconvenience. They think that because they line dry their clothes and have a few tomatoes on a patio, that they'll be able to survive a situation in which all services cease. They think food production and distribution is somehow independent of fuel and electricity. In fact, it is connected. Even till to a 3,500-acre wheat farm by horse-drawn plow, shut off power, and shut off food, period. Things is, we're using tractors and all this other stuff to harvest this food. And if it's gone, if you don't have gas to put in there to harvest this food, then they don't have a way to get the food somewhere. It's going to go bad. So that's just bottom line. Then you're going to be also looking at illness and injuries and things in that area. When the power goes down, many people who are solely dependent on the hospitals and their medication and the facilities to take care of, many of them set up in their home on machines and stuff. Without the power, they have a limited amount of time. They have a battery source on their units often enough. But once that battery runs out, they're screwed unless they can find some other source to take care of them. That is something you're going to be looking at right there. Another thing you're going to also look at is basically just people getting out there getting nasty. Says more than anything else will cripple our society should be the power fall. It's all well and good for a surgeon to have a knowledge of how to operate on a cancer tumor, but if sterile scalpels and anesthesia and dressings and other surgical assortments are not available, the surgeon's ability regress almost to the point of the tribal witch doctor by the lack of infrastructure, supplies, and services. And you sit there, if you've watched any documentaries or anything or read up on it, their situation was not sterilized at all. They went in there, and often, a lot of times, they didn't really give them anything for pain. They sit there and open them up. They didn't have gloves on often enough. They were sitting there sticking their hands into these areas that was contaminated. The areas was not. If you ever been in a third world country and seen how some of the treatments are going over there, you could see why there was so much chance of infection, diseases, and death. And that's what would happen in that situation if they are not able to take care of these people and treat them in a situation. Like I say, the things is weaving their own clothes. People don't know how to weave their own clothes. They don't have to preserve their own food. Many of them don't know how to make their own tools. They don't know how to raise their own sheep or whatever because you need, you know. So this is what he's talking about. That the fact is that America as an overall society is not equipped. Now, not that they can't learn, and many of them will learn how to survive. Many of them will learn how to do things, but many of them won't. Many of them will die for different reasons, either health reasons or freezing to death or starving to death or murdered by another person for their last can of beans or whatever. If it should happen is, in this situation here, it's going to regress. I hate to see it happen. The grid can go down for a certain length of time. Even I'm going to tell you what, even if it went down for a year, think about what could happen within a year. Only so far long can the government or will the government be able to feed and take care of people. Then they have to keep. They only have so much oil and gas they keep for themselves. So once that oil and gas gets within that limit, where they can't take care of the people anymore, they're going to have to take care of themselves. They're going to sit there and say, well, we can't do anything else. We're going to have to start shutting things down. It's only going to last so long. So this is basically a lot to think about. You're going to lose a lot of people. A lot of them's going to die from disease. A lot of them's not going to be able to get their medications. A lot of them's going to die from starvation. A lot of them's going to die from freezing or heat stroke. A lot of them's going to be murdered. So we don't know unless you are an individual who put up food and you know how to live off the land and survive without it and have supplies that you don't count on electricity to do with, you will stand more of a fighting chance. But if it does happen, there's going to be a lot of problems. And there's going to be the FEMA camps are going to get overloaded. People are going to be starving. People are going to be fighting. People are going to be stealing from one another. People are going to be killing one another after a certain length of time if it does not get up going in a certain length of time. The longer it takes for the power grid to get back up and running, the more you're going to see a deterioration of it until it is going again. So this is Live Prepper here. I want you to be safe, be happy. Bless you all and think about it.